Welcome to Chronicles of Old Singapore. This is Dr. Loh KS here. And on this episode, we have with us Tuah Bugis,
Thank you.
occasionally known as Sarafian Salleh. His Facebook profile says he's an author, a blogger, an engineer, a creator, and also a licensed tour guide. So I think we can see from there that he's actually a part-time engineer and a full-time historian. Very
Actually, a
happy to
full-time
have
en-
with. What was that?
I'm actually a full-time engineer, part-time historian. But it seems to be
I don't believe that. I think especially
okay.
at the end of the episode, people will realize what the balance is between the two things. I just want to plug Tuah Bugis' book, which just came out last year. It is actually titled Tuah Bugis. That's the main title. Chronicles of the Seafaring People of Singapore. That's the book over there. Where can we get the book?
Yeah, you can get it from me directly uh, uh, to my mobile. Or you can get it from Kinokuniya. They're selling it also. And also Wardah Books.
Who's behind the publisher?
The publisher. I'm the publisher myself.
Okay,
I
okay.
self-publish this book.
And
So
that bookstore, I've heard about it.
yeah, the bookstore is the bookstore. The one who acquired from me is Wardah Books,
Yeah.
managed and owned by Ibrahim Tahi. So he has this his shop in Kandar Street or Busra Street. That's where he sell all those unique books. So from what I know is that the books that he sells is something you don't really get it off the shelf.
Mm.
He personally import it into his shop and he sells it there.
Right, right.
So I feel honored. Yeah, I feel honored that he took my book into his shop.
Yeah, I think your book is part of his portfolio, right? Of things that I think I bought a book from him
Yes.
as well.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, and I look forward to reading your book as well. I think I hardly know Tuah Bugis except on Facebook briefly. We've corresponded a couple of times, so I'm really looking forward to find out more about his interest and his passion into the history of the Bugis and the history of the Malay world in Singapore today. So I was looking through one of your blurbs online, and it says since 1985 you started doing this research. What happened in 1985?
Okay. Um, I like to take photography. I like photography. So whenever I went, I'll have my camera with me. So as a secondary school boy, secondary three, carrying an SLR camera was a big thing. But I took it seriously because film was very expensive. So my pictures are all very selective. The time you shoot it, that's it. A few cents will be gone. Remember that those times you use a film camera, right? So uh, when there is an event or there is there is a festival, I'll have my camera with me, and I'll tell myself, with this camera, 36 exposure in one roll, it should last me for one day. So I'll be very selective. So there was this period of time when Singapore celebrated the 25 years of nation building. Maybe if you remember that, so 25 years of nation building, and they have a very big exhibition in Singapore Expo, World Trade Center. So at that time they call it World Trade Center. And there is a big exhibition hall, which is today replaced by VivoCity. So this exhibition hall has all the display of Singapore's success story. We have the time when Singapore gained independence, 1965, until our late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew took over. Then you have all the pictures and exhibits and artifacts. So it was quite interesting. But I took some photographs. I remember at the time. But then after the exhibition, I went uh, for my Friday prayers because I heard there is a mosque just opposite the road. Okay, this was in 1985, huh? So I was only secondary three. So when I was crossing the road, I saw this mosque. The mosque looked so gloomy, very haunted. Yet I see some motorbikes that people went in to pray. So I took a shot of that photograph. I took a shot of that mosque. So because I was still quite early, there's not much people, so I could have a good picture of the mosque across World Trade Center. So I went for my prayers. I went for my prayers. After that, I looked at the notice board, and the notice board showed a picture of one man who looked like an Angmo, like a European, and they put his name as Daing Ibrahim. So I don't, okay, I just took his picture and I, I forgot about it. So when the picture was processed, I showed my parents, especially my mom. So when my mom looked at the photograph, she told me, hey, this place was once a palace, and there lived a Bugis man. His name is Sultan Ibrahim. So um, when I heard about the word Bugis, it actually startled me because when I was a little boy, when I was very mischievous, my paternal side, my auntie would call me Bugis. Typically Asian parents, when the kids are naughty, right, they will shout Satan or Bahalo, stupid, or even dog, anjing. Yeah? Be it Malay, Chinese, or Indian, we have our own slurs and slang to scold a child. But in my family, they don't say Satan, they say Bugis.
Really?
Yeah, so I said, hey, the word Bugis is even much more powerful than Satan. And then again, that was I was a little boy, 4 or 5 years old, and I got angry and started to break flower pots and got mad. So as years went by, when I was in school, Sec 1, Sec 2, we learned the history of the world, starting from the history of Egypt, Mesopotamia, then only then the finally of Sec 2, we learned about Southeast Asia. I remember one of the book that I read, they said the Bugis were pirates. So I said, oh, maybe lah. My auntie called us Bugis because
Mm-hmm.
Bugis were pirates. But then again, I don't even know I was a Bugis. No. I don't even know. I thought I was a Malay or Javanese or something much uh, more neat. And when I was in Sec 3, when I took that photograph, back to the story of this Masjid Tang Ibrahim. So when I took the photograph, I showed to my mother. My mother told me that there lived a Sultan called Sultan Ibrahim, and he is of Bugis descent. I was like, oh, what's that, man? Bugis was a bad thing, and yet there is a Sultan of Bugis descent. So I asked my mom, so what's Bugis? So my mom told me that you are a Bugis, your father is a Bugis. Oh, is it? But when she talked to me the word Bugis, she's like whispering to me, nothing big or something that she will glorify. But another confusion was when during Hari Raya festival, Ramadan, preparation for Hari Raya, my grandmother would tell me, hey, Iba is my mother lah. No, Iba, come, kita pergi Bugis. Let's go Bugis. Yeah, in English. Then it also startled me again. Say, why Bugis again? So the word Bugis seems to be like a profanity. It was the descendant of the king. Yet, no, I've seen pictures of Bugis Street where the Angmo will gyrate their belly at streets. No? And my grandma wanted to go to Bugis Street for her high shopping spree. So that actually became a bit serious to me. So I didn't go deep into the history part because
Mm.
I wasn't good in history actually. What actually killed me in history were the dates. I've got to remember dates. I hate dates. The only I hate dates or numbers in history, but I love numbers in math. So that's why I went to the engineering line. Then, then uh, uh, I went to Bugis Street. Yeah, lah, I mean, I started to immerse myself towards Bugis. Then I realized slowly that we were of Bugis descent, but I don't even know what's actually. Then in poly, when I was in poly, I did the Rivera phrase. So we constructed our raft made from trash at Lavender Street because my friend's father owned a shop in Lavender, a pantry shop, and we carried the raft to Kallang River. So I was the rower, and we passed by a street called Kampung Bugis. And then my friend told me, "Hey, Sarafian, Kampung Bugis, this is where the pirates live." So I was I was also quite shocked. He also knows about Bugis. So all these accounts actually give me a lot of confusion about the Bugis.
Mm.
Bugis being very violent, piracy. Yet they have big names in Kallang and also Victoria Street, Bugis Junction, Bugis Street, everything Bugis, until today. And that actually uh, make me wonder. Lah. So I keep taking photographs of old structures and mosques. And when social media came about in the year 2008, we have things like Multiply and then eventually Facebook, and YouTube. I started to share these photographs on my social media. So apart from my engineering job, I have time to do photography. Okay, back to from my engineering job, because I run my own company.
Mm.
I run my own firm for 20 over years already, since 2001. So I have time to work very hard, work very smart, and I also have time for my heritage hobby. So this is just a hobby, nothing very, very scholarly like you guys are doing. So it's lots of oral record and lots of photographs. Only when social media came to our life, that was when I started to share photographs of old Singapore. I also have this uh, passion to look for road names. They call toponymics, right? Toponymics. So
Yeah.
I like to look at meanings behind road names. So that's my great passion. So I will share on my Facebook. Then my friend told me, Sarafian, do you know that the Bugis were the early settlers in Singapore? I said, yeah, I know. When Raffles came to Singapore in 1819, he declared Singapore a free port and everybody rushed in. Then he said, no, they were here very much early, 100 years, maybe 1,000 years before they came, before Raffles came. So true enough, no, I did some research, and I realized some of the names in Singapore, like Telok Blangah, Kallang, they were all named by the Bugis. Even the places like Mandai, probably the Bugis. Yeah, it's in my book. No? I wrote all this in my book. The possibilities. Now, my intention is not to say that we the ones who found Singapore. In fact, nobody found Singapore. Singapore is just a place where people will just pass by. They'll pass by. The Portuguese, the Dutch, the Chinese, the Indians. They just pass by Singapore. So they found Singapore to be a nice place to trade, and they give names. They give names. So like the Persians, they call Singapore Barchin Gapara and so on. So the Bugis came to Singapore 1,000 years ago, and they don't call it Temasek or they don't call it Singapura. They call it Mabalangor. Mabalangor in Bugis means the anchorage. So when Sang Nila Utama came to Singapore in 1299, he was said to have landed in Teluk Belanga. And the name Teluk Belanga has existed before Sang Nila Utama came. So the name Teluk Belanga, from some scripts that I've read, it came from the word Mabalangor, which means the anchorage. So just imagine, before Sang Nila Utama came, there were already Mabalangor, anchorage. So it tells us something to do with the presence of the Bugis and the Srivijayas in Singapore before history took place, in a way, in a way. So these are the things that actually boil up my spirit, to start to do serious writing. So I started to gather data, in 2008 until the time when my grandmother passed away. So when my late grandmother passed away, she told me she saw my passion in history and getting back the historical identity of the Bugis, or Singapore. So she told me, you can write, but don't write it wrongly, because people may get hurt, especially the Bugis. I said, okay. So she passed on. Then I started to write. So I started to write before I forget, because she was one of the walking encyclopedias of history of Singapore, because she lived here also in Lakochok, and she witnessed the Sultan Ibrahim's time when they were actually loitering in Serangoon Road. So she witnessed it, and she told me. My mother was also another uh, a data recorder. She recorded all the history of Singapore from her eyes, because she was from Silagos, and she knew that there was an istana in near Silagos, this Bidadari. And she told me lots of stories about the the Sultan of Johor. So these are the people that actually educated me in history. And surprisingly, most of those history buffs in my family, they were all ladies. My late grand auntie, my grandmother, mostly aunties, then my mother,
Mm.
and so on. None of the guys speak, especially the Bugis side. My uncles speak about my father don't really tell so much stories. So all this I've gathered all these stories, and I started to write. I started to write. So I started to write, and my first few coaches who taught me how to write was Professor Kevin Tan.
Mm. Yeah, you told me
Yeah,
that.
so
Yeah.
yeah, he's cool. And then I the first time I wrote my book, right, I wrote free writing. Yeah, ended up like 350 pages to 400 pages of writing, pure writing. And Kevin Tan looked at, oh, sorry, this is really tough to read because it sounds like an engineering report than a story. So I was like, how to write a professor? You just write like how you speak to me. Okay, that's what to write. So of course, along the way, I had people like Professor Peter Boschberg. I have good guys around. I've got Professor Peter Boschberg. I've got
Mm.
Carl Chalky from US. Carl Chalky.
Mm.
He came to Singapore. He guided me through the Temanggung history.
Australia.
Yeah. Oh, Carl Chalky, no, he's in Australia. He was
Mm.
an American, right?
He's
Then he went to
American. That's right.
Australia.
He came on the Peace
Yeah.
Corps. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So he came to Singapore and I brought him around. I drove him around Singapore and I brought him to Masjid Temanggung dari Ibrahim. He said, of all these years of writing about the Temenggong's and the Kangchus, I've never stepped into this mosque yet. So I brought him to
Mm.
Masjid Temanggung. That was in the year 2016, I think. Yeah. So when I was in Singapore. So I brought him there. And he told me lots of stories about Temenggong. You can find this video. I interviewed him on my YouTube channel.
Mm.
So he told me everything. So he told me everything. He said to me, to write, you need to you have to make it very simple. But he was also like half. He was looking at me, you're an engineer, Sarafian. I'll be very surprised if you can write it. Told me. I mean, he said in that manner. So I'll try. I said. So these are people who guided me. I have Peter Boschberg who always tells me about the history of the old straits of Singapore, the sailing, maritime culture, and so on, and all that stuff. And of course, along the way, I have people like Professor John McSick. I ask on and off, and he will help me through emails what he thinks about Singapore, early Singapore. And last but not least is Professor Wang Gungwu. I regularly communicate with him before the book is produced. He tell me what to write. He said to me, Sarafian, the Bugis and the Chinese, we are not refugees, no. We are migrating culture. We don't leave our country because we want to run away from certain power. No? We naturally migrate to Singapore and find profits there, prosper there. So these are the people who will help me.
Mm.
So this happened sometime between the year 2014 to 2020. So I I I I wrote. I keep writing, but I don't know when to really publish it. Okay, well, of course, I took a grant. I applied for a grant. Applied for an HP grant.
Mm. Mm.
I was rejected 3 times
Do you know why?
because I'm not a historian. I'm not a historian, first. Second thing is that uh, I didn't go, maybe I didn't go for the clinic or whatever, but I'm very sure that I'm not a historian. This I could publish. I'm an engineer. And the subject that I'm writing is something that's really, I wouldn't say it's very deep, but it's one of the sub-ethnic community of Singapore which may go wrong. But then again, my book has been vetted by the people that I've mentioned just now, the professors I mentioned, so they read it, they said this
Mm.
book is very good. But one of them told me that, yeah, you have to have the story with you, publish. So, okay, no problem. Then when I went genealogy, when I joined Genealogy Society, I submitted my NHB grant uh, pro- uh, proposal through World Scientific. Even then, I was rejected.
Mm.
So the same reason again, they say that you have to have somebody with you. So okay, in that case, I just want to give up. I don't publish it. That was when my cousin came, uh, Rahimi Wahab. He said to me, this is a beautiful book. And you've spent 15 years to write it. Why not just give up? I said, no, I mean, uh, what's the point? I just publish it in Facebook, make it content. I said, no. You publish it. I'll help you. So Rahimi Wahab, he edited for me. together with some of my friends from Genealogy Society, they all put their heads together, no, and they edited my book. They just proofread my book. So very nice of Genealogy Society also. During the last minute of printing, they said, that, okay, I'll finance your book.
Wow.
It was godsend. They said that when they read my book, they said this book is awesome to them. It's very awesome. It's everything. It's everything. Everything's here. I mean, they could feel the challenges I went through. Yeah. So I was blessed, and I got the book published. So all in all, I sold about maybe 500 books, you know, for the first 4 months.
Mm.
So it was good. Yeah. So that was the journey of doing this book. Now, after I published this book, now I've got lots of other questions. You know, when I published this book, people came to me with their questions, with inputs, contribution, with anger. Said, hey, how come you don't include me in the book? I said, no, I don't even know you at the time. So there'll be another volume coming up. That will be a bit different perspective. So to me, this book was produced just to share with everyone in Singapore that all of us can write. You know, like me, I'm an engineer. Something that's, I would say impossible, but something quite surprising to people when I give lectures and public talks. I say that I'm an engineer. They're all like, oh, sure, no, you're bored. I say, yeah, I'm an engineer, but I'm going to share with you how I express myself through this book.
Yeah, there are
So,
there is still hope for engineers.
because I know most of the writers, you know, they are in the humanities and they know social science.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, it's a bit hard. But then now I've got a swing of it. I've got a swing of it, you know, to keep writing.
Mm,
So,
mm.
but before this, I do co-write for other books, you know, like Bicentennial, the Malays, uh, a bit of contribution for Hidayah Amin's project. So I did quite a few before
Mm,
this book came
mm,
about.
mm.
Yeah,
All those help. All those are little steps.
all those help. Yeah.
Can I ask you what does Tuah Bugis mean?
Okay, okay. Yeah, Tuah, Tuah means actually what Tuah is actually a nickname for me and also some of my siblings. They call it Bertuah.
Uh,
Bertuah in Malay means rascal, little rascal. So if they don't call you Bugis or they don't call you Setan, they call you Bertuah. So Bertuah means rascal. The word ber with a prefix ber, the prefix ber, means rascal. But without the prefix ber, just tuah means luck, lucky, the
that's
hang
right.
tuah.
Yeah.
So luck. So, uh, but then again, I was one of the eldest in my cousins. So some of my family call me tuah, because means the eldest tuah. Okay, so they call Bertua. But when I asked friends, what title, the title came in the last minute. It didn't come earlier.
Yeah.
It was actually a month before I printed. Then I decided to do on this.
Wait a minute.
But
Don't you have this name all this time?
okay, the Tuah Bugis is actually the nickname of my social media,
Right. Right.
social
Yeah.
media.
You already have
Okay, so
this, right?
I have this, but then I don't intend to have this as a title of my book.
Mm, mm.
I intend to have something else.
Okay.
Okay, so Tua, to answer your question, is Tua means luck. Luck, but then it actually reflects my past where they call me Bertua. So Bertua, but I don't put Bertua Bugis. I put Tua Bugis. Okay, Tua means luck. Bugis is the ethnicity. I'm a Bugis. So I put Tua Bugis. So when I put Tua Bugis in social media in 2008, people thought I was the descendant of Hang Tua. I said, no, I'm not. I'm just being a lucky Bugis. So the first person who actually suggested this name, Tuah Bugis, was Professor Kevin Tan also.
Right.
He told me, Sarafian, nobody knows Sarafian Salleh, but people know who's Tuah Bugis. I said, okay. It's a branding. So he was one of those who suggested. That was in 2017. Yeah. So eventually, during the last days of publication, I said, okay, I think I name it Tuah Bugis. And there you go. There it
Kevin
went.
is one of those masters who can churn out those book titles.
Yeah, I know. He's like a He's like before ChatGPT was him. Like,
He probably can do this, as well for his friends, right? As for his own
yeah,
books.
yes, yes, yes. He's like a the meat grinder. Just put the meat every come out.
I just want to
So no,
ask
like
you, Karl Trocky's, famous book, one of
okay.
his two famous books. The other one is Opium
Yes.
and Society. How
Yes.
did reading Prince of Pirates uh, impress you?
Yeah, it was. I think that book actually got me hooked. It got me hooked into taking pride of the Bugis existence. The way he exhaustively investigate the scripts and the balance sheet of the Bugis trading and putting to simple word really inspires me. When I read texts from Professor Wong Lincoln, yeah, Wong Lincoln, right? So he has all those trading records of the Bugis. I went to Central Library in USY. I got a chance to look at his figures. I couldn't understand because I learned accounting before, but no, I'm not really to that deep. Where he has all those thousands of figures and no summary. So when Count Chocki he came up with his figures, the Kangchu system, the opium data, I can understand much easily because he explained. So when it comes to the Prince of Pirates, that title actually intrigued me. When I first met him face to face in 2016, he asked me again, Sarafian, I named my book Prince of Pirates. Until today, I couldn't erase that little guilt, he felt, he feels by giving the name Prince of Pirate. Am I offending anyone? I said, no, that's branding. That's branding. I said, because no, he looked into Dai Ibrahim's character when he was young, as being a pirate. He was the piracy was one time. Then he turned to a new leaf and became the Sultan or the Temenggong of Teluk Blangah. So that actually triggered him to write Prince of Pirates at that time. But he still has this feel of feeling very bad. I said, no, that's a title you've given, and that's a title that has lived for half a century now, and that inspires me to look into it. It's an excellent title. So that book actually tells a lot about the breakdown of the Bugis enterprise. No, many people, many of us Singaporeans don't know where the word Kangchu comes about.
Yeah.
They think the Kangchu comes from the Chinese uh, term. Yeah, of course, when Daeng Chelak, one of the five Bugis prince, when he liberated Johor in 1722, after he after the five Bugis prince got hold of Malaya, they brought in 10,000 Chinese from China to work in the plantation. Okay, uh, uh, yeah, I mean, you can imagine them bringing in, or when the Chinese came, they know where to go. They met this Bugis viceroy, and the Bugis viceroy said, "Okay, you guys, you open up a plantation in Riau." So they managed Riau. And from there, they gave land grants. They gave land grants. Okay, to the land grants, the word Kangchu, I believe the word Kangchu comes from the Chinese, but then the concept actually came from the Bugis viceroys. So that was how Koch explained, and that was how I understood what the Bugis Kangchu and eventually became Lim Chu Kang, Chua Chu Kang,
Mm.
and so on. So that gave me uh, like something to click on, like a cornerstone for me to start to just enhance the content of my book. So my book simplify, even make it even more simpler for people to understand about the Kangchi system, which I have it in one of the page. So there are lots of other things. Culture can talk about the politics of the Bugis very very fairly. There isn't any sensation, there isn't any dramatization or some sensational stories in there. It's just word for word, and it's very simple to understand. And I really advise everyone to read this book until today.
Mm. Mm.
So it's a good book. It's a very good book. So whenever I go to Teluk Blangah and do my talks, I will bring his book to show that this is the book that I referred to about the country system. It still lives on until today. That's
Yeah, those are
that's my
two
answer.
two great books, and it's a pity that Carl didn't bring that story into 20th century. Where it would have been even more interesting. I think he
But
tried. Mm,
yeah, I think
mm,
I think he tried, but it's also our government. I'm sorry, it's also our education system, our government. Maybe they have to put this into the history.
mm,
At least people know where the word Kaluchu comes from, where the word Kalang comes from, where the word Telok Blangah comes from. All this has to be in text, in books. Those
right.
people know. Yeah,
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned all those historians, whether it's Carl looking direct and specifically at the Bugis, and
Mm,
also the other historians of pre-colonial Singapore, of the wider Nusantara and Southeast Asia, the Malay world.
yeah.
What is your own contribution to the literature? Right, as you said, you are not a professional historian. You are writing this as someone who is passionate about his own heritage. What do you bring, you think, that is different, that is unique to you?
And this book uh, emphasizes a lot also on genealogy. So genealogy is the most important tool to be a good historian. Okay, sorry, I'm not a historian, but I'm speaking as though I'm a historian. But genealogy is the one that helped me rediscover my roots. Whenever I give a lecture or speech to guests, I say the most important tool to understand the history of the country is to understand the history of your family. If you don't understand the history of family, whatever you read about the country, you cannot connect, and it stops there. But if you know the history of a family, you know where your father comes from, your mother comes from, your grandfather, your grandmother, and you know the history of how they were brought up. And if you were to put your parents' story together, you get a piece of history there. Now, the best thing is that if I know the genealogy of my friends, Chinese, Indians, Eurasians, and Malays, I put together, you get a small history of the nation of Singapore. Okay, now, I remember I asked you before, was for the time right now, that was about 5, 6 years ago. I remember I asked you first time, I talked to you, I asked you, can oral record be validated as the
Yeah.
history? Then you told me, yes, you can. If you have 3 or 4 information that's common, that could be one of the history source of that particular subject. So I remember you said that. So that actually gives me I mean, that little reply from you actually gives me lots of encouragement.
Mm, mm.
Gives me hope. Gives me hope to interview people. And that's how I got this book up. So this book has primary sources. No, I travel, I got sources from people, but there are also stories, local stories of those who witnessed the development of Singapore.
Yeah. How many oral
So back to
histories do you think you interviewed?
I think quite I don't know. I think this book maybe about 50
Mm,
to
mm,
70
mm.
people. Yeah, yeah. But some of them are just sentences,
Right,
sentences.
right, right.
Some of them, most of the, in fact, some of those key people have passed on. Like Asma Laili, a few others that the Bugis people have interviewed. So this book strongly encourage people to understand their family history, their genealogy. That's where actually I got the attention of the Genealogy Center of Singapore. I said, oh, this
Mm.
is a genealogy book. So family tree is very important. So whenever I give a talk, I said, after this talk, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, the best thing to do is to do your family tree. From a family tree, you know where you come from. And that actually creates a sense of belonging and patriotism to your nation.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, and such a great method. I've never really thought about the family, not just the nuclear family, but going back the roots and all that.
Yeah, yes.
Can you let us know what is the structure of memory you think after having interviewed 50 to 70 people, the structure of memory in the Bugis community? How much memory is there? Is it strong memory? Is it very specific memory?
it's a mix. It's a mix of very, very structured memory, which I've got
Mm,
in terms of genealogy,
mm, mm,
names until sixth generation. Some memories are just hearsay. Hearsay, they said, okay, I heard about this, I heard about that. You know? Okay, so being a very logical, being an engineer, I'm very logical. I need to see logics. So they say that this fella, he has his blood related to certain sultan, certain raja. No? So I said, I want to see some evidence. Of course, I say in a very tactful manner. I said, if you have a picture of the family, you just share with me. So some, some share with me their facts. But let me just share with you. After I interviewed Malay community especially, I realized that the Bugis actually keep their genealogy, but they are very shy to share. They
mm,
don't want to share. Most of the Bugis in Singapore, they are of royal descent. You'll be very surprised. They are from the Raja in Riau, Engku here, Daeng. So these are honorific title. There are few in Singapore, but they just want to say low profile. So, so even for me, my great grandfather has the title Daeng. When it comes to my grandfather say, hey, remove the word Daeng. It's so old fashioned. So these are the things that also happen in other families. They remove the Daeng, they remove the title Engku or Raja
mm,
because they said it may they say like it may affect certain future prospects or family ties. Some they really want to break up from family, so they actually remove. So there are there are uh there are family or oral records that are very structured. They really remember, they recorded, they kept it. Some of them have heirlooms to show that they've been to these places, given by the Sultan, given by the Raja or the Dutch and so on. Some of them they don't want to share. Some really wealthy ones, they say that I don't want to be mentioned in the book.
mm.
They just to remain anonymous. Most of them are, most of these Bugis people are shipbrokers. They are shipbrokers until today, but they just want to stay anonymous. So I say, okay,
Right. It's so
yeah,
interesting, right? I mean, um, obviously, from my own oral history as well, there are things that people want to share, and there's a desire
mm,
to share, to speak today, especially. But there's also a lot of reluctance, as you said. You know,
yeah.
um, I guess what I am interested in is that how do you persuade them? How do you get across that barrier?
Years. It takes years. Even getting the story of my family, it took about 10 years, almost 10 years of persuasion,
Mm,
convince them that this is a project, this is a Singapore memory project, so to speak. Has nothing to do with uh, making you feel embarrassed or making fun of you. It's the history. It has to be documented. So it really takes time. It takes lots of time. I'm sure you when you do interview, there's some people who want to talk, but eventually you can get him to talk. I did a few projects for people, for a book projects for people where I've got to interview. One of them is like one of the project I did was for Masjid Omar Kampung Melaka.
mm,
Yeah, the publisher is Opus, Sharon Yu. So she gave me a list of people for me to interview and write. Means I've got to meet like 20 people. I've got to meet all those mosque people and the family and interview. So if you have a book, you can see almost like half of the book was actually uh, documented by me. I did the interview, oral interview. Some of them don't want to talk. I went there, but I don't give up because I know this person who's tight-lipped and he has lots of stories to share. They don't even want to be photographed. But I'm good at it. I can really go smooth. I go smooth. I meet up with him. Every day I'll be at the mosque. Park my car outside there. You see, oh, Sarafian is here. But then I'll do my best to get the story out. So yeah, it takes time, but I'm very patient. I'm very patient. I mean, if there is an assignment for me to do, I'll make sure I'll get it done. Yeah, it takes some pride. So I got all the stories out. Even this imam who doesn't want to be interviewed, I got to interview him for almost an hour plus. I photograph him, and so on. You know, a lot of people tell me that, hey, this guy is very hard. So but I managed to get it. So this is just one of the many projects I did. You know, where I don't want to be named, or I don't want to name it, but then
Mm.
I help to get the data out.
Mm.
So I'm good at it. So but and all this was trained through this Buddhist story, like this book. So the only there are some stories like my mom, she doesn't want to share. That one I failed. I could interview lots of people. I couldn't interview my mom because my
Yeah.
mom really keep
Yeah.
tight some stories, which but it's more of a respect than anything else. But for those who are tight knit, I eventually asked the permission that, okay, I'm going to publish a story. I hope you allow me to publish. Okay, okay, but make sure you don't say that. Don't say this. Okay, I won't say. I showed them the last script, and they say, hey, I thought I don't need to mention this, but Chi, no, this one, actually will connect the story. I mean, I'll reveal to them. And okay, lah, okay, lah. Cincai, cincai, okay. So, so yeah, I mean, what you are doing is something that I like. You know? You also interview people. I like doing it. So if you look at my YouTube videos, I interviewed some people that I think is quite a good subject matter to be remembered.